Kia ora, everybody. My name is Sarah Washbrook and I am Deputy Chair for TENS, Technology Education New Zealand, and we are proud to bring you today our next Wednesday webinar. I'll be introducing our host at the moment, but just to give you some little bits and pieces about the webinar itself, the webinar is being recorded, so you can look at this later on, and it will be saved and will be sent out as a link for you. You will have a chance to ask questions. There is a Q&A box on the Zoom link as well. So if you would like to ask any questions of our presenter today, feel free to pop the questions in the box and we'll come to the questions at the end of the webinar. We will start off today's session with a karakia which has been donated to TENS. Maori ora kia amato, arahina mato kia amato mahi, ki mihi he huarahi, mo te kaupapa o mātauranga o Hangarau, a whina atu, a whina mai, te poe here ne ia mātou. Hui e, taiki e. So kia ora and welcome to, like we said, our webinar for this month, and we're looking at things to do with stuff you didn't know you had, and we're going to introduce today Damon. Damon has come all the way from MOTAT in Auckland, and great to see you online here. Now, I've been sent a little bit of a blurb about Damon, and this is from one of his colleagues. I don't think he's prepared for this one, but I'm just going to read out the background for Damon here. So it says, for the past 17 years, Damon has dedicated his career to education, imparting knowledge to students across all age groups. He's honed his skills teaching as a visual effects and motion graphics artist at the Media Design School and has later served as national technologist and educator at MindLab. And today, Damon continues to inspire and nurture creativity at the Museum of Transport and Technology, otherwise known as MOTAT for everybody, where he's the leading innovator and educator. Currently, Damon assists students in expanding their abilities by employing a range of techniques and practices. So without further ado, I will stop sharing and I will pass it over to Damon.
Kia ora, everyone. First of all, that is, interesting intro. Basically, yes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go through and start sharing my screen and just quickly go through a little bit about, once again, my background, but also a few things that we're going to be doing. So just give me a second. All right, so as Sarah was saying, yes, I used to be a former teacher at Media Design School. I was also the national technologist at the MindLab, and my current role is pretty much here at the museum. It's an interesting journey for me because I never thought I'd get into teaching, and I have to admit I am very passionate about teaching. I love sharing knowledge with people and also having people share their knowledge with me. I truly do think it's one of those things that helps to spark innovation. And that's why where I am right now is probably one of the best fits in regards to coming up with new ideas. So I work here at MOTAT. So MOTAT's the Museum of Transport and Technology. And if you have never been here before, I can honestly say you're missing out, because it is one of those places where, for me, and for a lot of people, when you come here, it does inspire you. And actually, that's one of our key things, is to inspire the young innovators of tomorrow. It's one of those places that when I walk through the gate and I'm greeted by colleagues and that, your ideas pretty much start to flow. And this is kind of where this whole webinar came from. It's about basically sharing ideas with other people, seeing all the things that you already have, but also working with your colleagues in different ways. As you can see, the museum is all about transport. It's all about technology, as it states, but we are all about trying to make things a little bit more real, where people can see things working. So not just behind glass cabinets, in that they can actually see the beam engine, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, working, or the pump house working, the trams all working. So they can get a bit of a taste of how it used to actually be. It's also a great place at the moment because we are pushing further and further into the digital realm. A lot of our exhibits are more heavily digital content, so there's more interaction going on, and various other things that you can also do outside of MOTAT online. One of the coolest things is at the moment we are officially moved from MOTAT 1 because we have a MOTAT 1 building and MOTAT 2, and the education team is all the way over where the planes are. And this is my favorite because I love planes. In the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that we've also done stuff with Rocket Lab, and I work with these students with also the Rocket Lab team, and we go through and build rockets. So all I'm saying right now is I have one of the coolest jobs, and I will gladly say that. But as you can see, it is throughout all these pictures, it's been children coming through, and you've seen a lot of parents in that. But like I said, our main goal is to inspire the young innovators of tomorrow. So what I want to talk to you about today is pretty much, let me just go through. I'm just going to come back to this later, is this. We're going to be covering basically talking about makey-makeys, microbits, Arduinos, and robotics. And there is a reason why we're going through and talking about this. Throughout my career, I have spoken to a lot of teachers who say the same sort of thing. We had a robotics program at school, and it was led by one person, and now they're gone. Or we have got all the stuff that I found in a cupboard, and we don't know what it is. I actually had that experience just a year ago where a gentleman came up to me and said, hey, I found all of these things in the cupboard at school, and we were going to throw them out. And they were Raspberry Pis, which is like a mini processor, and you can build a computer with it. But no one knew what they were, and pretty much didn't know what to do with them. So we sat down and showed them how they could actually utilize them within school. Another thing it's about also, if you are familiar with all of this stuff from the makey-makeys and the microbits, and you already use them, you might use them in a way where you're just staying to the same lesson over and over again, and maybe not looking outside the boundary of how far you can push them. And for us, we like to really push the ideas and a lot when it comes to technology. We also like to see technology being used not just within one classroom, but in multiple classrooms and multiple different subjects. So for instance, I've had, when I was at the Mind Lab, we ran this course called the DCL course, and we were showing a lot of teachers how to go through and use Tinkercad, which most of you will probably know is the 3D package that it's real easy to go through and use and show students. And then there's also this one called Sculptress, which is organic modeling. And talking to the teacher, and she was an English teacher at a secondary school, and she was saying, I have no idea why I'd use this. I don't know why you're showing us this. There is no reason for me to go through and use this. I teach English. And sitting down with her, it was like, well, you can go through and use this if you really want to. You don't have to. You can introduce this to your class. And we came up with some different scenarios how she could go through and introduce it. And the one that she took away with her was, how about trying to get your students to read something, a description of a character, and every person in that room will have a different idea of what that character looks like, and then try and get them to actually create it in 3D. So if it talks about there's a scar on the right side of the face, and it basically helps them to project what they see in their mind. Now, a lot of these packages, some of them like the Tinkercad and Sculptress, they seem really daunting and something that you don't really want to pick up straight away and use, because they seem like it takes a lot of like there's a large learning curve, which I would disagree. And it's not because I'm used to it. I would say it's purely for the fact that as this technology and as the companies who create this go further and further, they actually try and make it a little bit more simple. I was actually looking at Tinkercad just recently, and I came across a post that they are looking at putting AI into it, where you can do AI prompts and actually go through and build a lot of stuff in 3D. And we'll get back to that later as well and talk about that. Okay, so Microcontrollers. Now, most people in schools will probably have seen what a microcontroller, some of the ones that we're going to be talking about are makeys and that, but a lot of people don't necessarily know what a microcontroller is. And the easiest way to explain it is, especially when we're explaining it to kids, just think of it like a little mini brain that is performing a certain task. And it's a very basic task. It can be a very basic task. And most schools that I've come across so far all have some sort of microcontroller in their classroom or in someone's classroom that they've gone through and used. And the one that has probably in most schools that I can think of at the moment would be the makey, which is the beginner's one. The makey came out many years ago now, and it was one of those ones that allowed students to go through and learn about circuits and creating a circuit and using this to control something. It really does mimic your keyboard. So any functions you can do on your keyboard, you can do with the makey. The great thing about the makey at that time is it was it was a low cost item that you could bring into your classroom. It was very durable, so it wouldn't break if the kids turned around and dropped it on the ground too much. There are some things that would fall off it, but it was one of those ones that I think every teacher, when they heard about it, started picking them up and going and saying, these are great. We want to buy more of these and do some fun things with them. And then along came the microbit, and the microbit has pretty much taken over the makey. It can do everything that the makey can do, except it doesn't really have all the same outputs in regards to all the many outputs, and I'll get to that very soon. But it also has more features. It can go through, and it has a compass, an accelerometer. It has all sorts of different things on there that allow you to get feedback, to get some information back from it, and also allows you to pair up and do various things. And then we have the Arduino, which has actually been around for many years. It even outdates the makey. And I would probably honestly say that the makey and the microbit, when they were going through and creating it, they would have probably used an Arduino to go and help create those two boards. The Arduino is really one of those ones for serious hobbyists or people who want to start getting into prototyping. You can do, with buying some extra accessories, you can go through and do things like make a little robot. We used to do this thing called a Rebot, which is a recyclable robot, and similar to an MBot. And if you don't know what an MBot is, I'll show you very soon, but it would allow you to go and build a robot pretty much for about $40. And it was pretty cool. But the Arduino is one of those ones where if you really sit down and learn, and there is a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to going through and using it, and you understand how all the accessories work, you can pretty much build anything. And I'm not just saying that, like, my father's an inventor by trade, and he is an electronic engineer, and he introduced me to the Arduino, a long time ago, actually one even before the Arduino, and the stuff that he's made with it is just, it is amazing. Okay, so moving on. So all those microcontrollers are great, but unless you actually have something to go through and code them with, they're pretty much just sit there dormant and do nothing. And this is where block-based programming comes into play. Now, most schools that I am aware of, that I have worked with, know about block-based programming. Obviously, because the digital curriculum, a lot of schools have adopted block-based programming into their lessons. So they'll be doing things like Scratch or RGBlock or other programs. But every time we have kids come into MOTAT, when I have Scratch on, they get so excited because, like, we know Scratch, we know what to do. This is so cool. And what I want to do is show you a few programs that you may or may not know that work really well with those microcontrollers and other devices. And once again, they're all pretty much the same. They're all block-based. So obviously the first thing is Scratch. So as you can see, I believe most teachers are aware of what Scratch is. Even if they haven't used it, they've probably seen it. And the great thing about Scratch, it has all these different libraries that are in here where you can hook up a makey and it will create all the libraries, all the blocks that you can use for the makey, and same with the microcontroller. The Scratch is pretty impressive. And Scratch is one of those ones that I would honestly recommend if you haven't started using it, or if you know of students who maybe are struggling in regards to get their head around it. There's some really good tutorials online that break down everything from what each block actually means in the real world, and also how you can go through and teach a lot of different kids. We've had stories where I remember talking to a teacher about, she said she had a student in her class who didn't like doing any of the written work in that, and she introduced Scratch to the class, and he fell in love with it, and he just excelled to the point where he started doing everything inside Scratch. So he would start seeing if he could do, he asked, can I do some of my writing inside there? Because you can create a story and journeys. And I just want to show you how we've actually used it as well.
So Project Y works with MOTAT.
So this here is basically,
So this is our third year that we've been working with Project Y. So every time they come in, they ask
sorry,
us
I'm getting a little bit of feedback on
that's
my fault. Okay, so this here is basically Project Y. They grab a whole bunch of different schools, they come in, and we have about 90 minutes to go through and do something fun with these kids. And the way that we normally do it is, it's not just about fun, it's about getting them to be empowered and go through and realize that they can actually make a difference. So this one here, we created a game that is just using Scratch. And when I say we created a game, I'm talking about all of the students. We sat down, we brainstormed, and we talked about this, and we created a game that would teach kids all about bullying and what you can, how you might feel when it comes to bullying, because we wanted them to people who may have never been bullied or are bullies, how they could actually empathize with these people that are being bullied. And the way it worked is we had on the screen, we set it up so you could see through the camera. So you might be able to see just in this shot here, if I just actually go back here, oops, sorry. If I go back here, you can see that there is these little aliens, and then you can actually see the student's head just right here because it's going through the camera. And the way it would work is they would go through and code it with all the blocks that they need to code it, and would explain what all the blocks actually mean. And then we already had a little setup where they could go and type in some negative comments. So some negative words, or words that they have heard when they have been bullied. The idea is, this is a little green alien, one of the sprites that is already in there. And then this is a little robot that's in there. And this alien would shoot out all these comments that would go and attack this robot. Now, the idea is they would actually have to swipe these words away. And the thing is, as the alien got closer and closer to the robot, and when I say swipe, they'd actually physically, swipe their hands over the cameras and see the motion, and the camera would pick up the motion, and it would knock the really negative comments off the screen. So the idea is it would shoot off the screen, and as they were doing this, they were realizing, as the alien gets closer, there's more and more negative comments that are coming. I can hear them saying all these nasty things. And they were getting tired, and they were getting frustrated because they weren't winning. So all of these actual real feelings that they would actually get if they were being bullied. And it went to a point where it excelled a little bit more, where they could actually take it back to their school and keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And that's what we try to do is when we build things, we try to have a purpose of why we're building it, not just to teach them how to do something, but actually how to go through and make something that could actually change something within their community. For us, it's really important because if they see that it's just, oh, this is just a lesson that we're learning, that's great, that's fun, it was fun. But if they see the impact where they can go back to their school and show their friends and their friends play it, and then they start to realize, wow, it's actually quite tiring being abused in this way. And it's actually quite upsetting, and I get frustrated, and physically just have that happen to their bodies as they're trying to play this game is actually, it's kind of a good way of going through and learning. Let me just go on to the next one. Okay, so that was Scratch. We use Scratch quite a lot. Obviously, there's also the other ones like MBlock. If you're not used to MBlock, MBlock is designed for the MakerBots and the other MBlock or the other MBlock gear that they actually go through and make. It also has third party though. It has everything like an Arduino in there. You can put a microbit in there. You can go through and set a makey library in there. And when you do that, if you click on it, it will then go and swap out all the blocks to represent so a microbit. So as soon as you click on a microbit, it will go through and swap out the main blocks. So only you can access the blocks that you can use for microbit. It's great. It has its limitations like most of these programs because obviously they're catering for their own devices. With this one, it allows you to, as I said, I just clicked on the microbit one and allows you to go through and still go through and program your microbit, but it's still very limited. It doesn't have some of the features that you would find in some of the other block-based programs. Then this is one that most people that I've spoken to, a lot of people actually haven't heard of this one. It's called Kitten Block. I love this one. And the reason why I love this one is to me, this is quite powerful because it allows me to create my own custom libraries. That means if you know how to write code as well, you can actually build your own custom libraries for things. And it is open source. A lot of people go through and there's quite a few forums where people share ideas of what you can go through and do. And it is one of those ones where the more you start to dive into it, the better you have an understanding of the microcontroller that you're using and how you can go through and manipulate it and change things on it. And just a bit of a note. One of my things in regards to my background, the reason why I love block-based programming is I am dyslexic. I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until way after I'd actually left school. And I got into programming because when in visual effects, you have to write Python scripts and stuff like that. And I would get syntax error after syntax error. And normally it was to do with spelling and that. And I love the fact that knowing that Java and knowing that Python and there are people out there creating custom blocks at the moment, so I can just snap things together, makes my life a lot easier. But this is why I love block-based programming, because you can really push it and go further and further. And then if you do need to write some stuff, you can go through and write. Make code is the other one that I think a lot of people may know, especially if you have a microbit. Make code is by Microsoft, and the beautiful thing about this one is it is growing really, really fast. The amount of tutorials that are online, the amount of different libraries you can get, and the accessories that people are making for it. And it's purely for the fact that it's a very, very low costing device. I think you can pick them up for about $28 now. And it has multiple sensors, multiple things, inputs and outputs on it that you can do some really fun things. But once again, a lot of people are using it and not necessarily knowing what you can do with it. But the other one I wanted to show you is this one here, which is once again by Microsoft. And this is Make Code arcade, which is for designing, going through and designing games. It's pretty much, it's not new. It has been around for a little while, but it's been in beta. And with this, you can actually buy a device. You can even go through and make your own device, and you can build a game, and then you can upload it to the device and play it on there. So it kind of allows you to take it away from the actual laptop or computer and, you know, walk around with this device and play a game. But obviously you can go further with that. It doesn't have to be a game. Obviously, the focus is on the game side of things, because for kids, they love to know how to go through, and they love playing games, and they want to know how to go through and make a game. So they are the different programs that we go through and use when it's block-based programming. So Makey. Okay, let's talk about this. Every time I would talk to a teacher, and I'd say, okay, well, we can do something really cool with Makey. They would say, oh, we've already done stuff with Makey. I say, okay, cool, that's cool. What have you done? And they say, well, we've done the piano. And then that's it. It's just dead silent. And no one is saying anything, and, you know, will say, you know, so what else have you done? Just the piano? Yep, just the piano. And that's where the limitation is. A lot of people who get this, because that was probably one of the first tutorials that anyone ever saw, I think that's what they really saw the Makey as just being good for. And don't get me wrong, because there's, you know, I would say people who are watching this right now, you've got some really brilliant ideas and done some amazing things. And please believe me, I would love to hear what those ideas are. But just majority of the people that I've come across have said the same thing, that they've done this. But let me show you how we go through and use the Makey. And it may be similar to what you have done. Okay, so the Makey can be a piano, it can be a drum, it can be a flute. And people look at me and go, well, what do you mean it can be a flute? Well, think of it like this. So the way a Makey works is 2 points actually have to connect to each other to make a circuit. And if you just have, say, a tube and a piece of tin foil and another piece of tin foil underneath, when you blow on one piece of tin foil, it's going to connect with the other, and that makes a circuit. So you can start building basically a flute from it. It can be a rain gauge. It can go through and be a wind gauge, a seismograph. A monster bin is a project that I worked with my daughter's school, where they had issues with rubbish, and we created a monster bin. So every time the kids would throw the rubbish in the bin, it would connect to the little plate at the bottom and it would growl. The downside to this is kids took rubbish out of the bin to put it back in the bin. So we had to eliminate it. Game controller. And it also can be a marble maze, and the marble maze could be a square marble box with a maze in it. And you could actually set it up so if it hits the sides, it actually triggers it off. So if the marble hits the side, it triggers it off, because it doesn't actually have to be earthed. And we'll talk about this. Okay, so I did this little exercise a few weeks back where it's like, okay, I'm going to make a game. So I'm going to make a rowing game. So what do I need? I'm going to get some cardboard, and I'm going to put the cardboard, and I also need some tinfoil, because the tinfoil needs to go on there, because we need something that's conductive to create a circuit. Okay, cool. That sounds great. Sounds very easy. Awesome. So next thing is, how do we wire this up? So I'm going to wire this up where I'm making a game controller for a rowing game. And the way it works is I'm going to have some tinfoil on the floor that's propped up like water, and as my paddle goes over the actual tinfoil, it makes a connection, which then allows me to go through and control something. So that would mean, obviously, in Scratch or whatever block-based program I'm going to use, I'm going to make a game that's all about rowing, right? So, and by the way, you can add as many as you like. That's the beautiful thing about this. So as I added the one, I went, actually, why don't we change this and actually add 4 here? So that means that a class can play. So 4 people in the class could go through and play, or maybe it could be 20 or maybe 30. It just depends on how you go through and set it up. So the next step was I wanted to look at how can we relate this back to the curriculum? How could we relate this back to the few things that are here, like I know now we're introducing the histories curriculum. I know there's an issue with numeracy and literacy. I know we need to focus on the digital curriculum. So how can we tie all of that together? Because if we can tie it all together, that means, you know, we're saving a lot of time to actually focus on other areas as well. So what I did is started building this game in Scratch. And the students would actually go on a physical journey, meaning they have to paddle. I'll put here down the river. It's actually up the river. Paddle up the river, and they would paddle and paddle, and they would get to a certain point. And once they got to that point, basically a board will appear, and they will then have to go through and answer the question. If they don't answer the question in time, or if they get the wrong answer, then the walker would actually go backwards as it's obviously traveling up the river. It would then go against the flow and then start traveling backwards. And it looked something like this, where it would go through, you'd paddle, and then it would stop, and then you'd have to answer the question. And then once you answer the question, it would allow you to keep paddling again, and you can paddle. And the great thing about this is all the kids can paddle all together. And every time one of the kids just makes the connection, it will allow the walker to keep going, or you could set it up where all four of them have to make the connection at the same time, and then they'll travel forward. And it was like, it's one of those ones where you can take it way further. Now, this is just a mock-up of the game, going through and building quite a lot of different things for it right now. But the idea is you can add numeracy and literacy, obviously all in here. You can add the digital curriculum, getting them building certain parts in here. You can do all of that and focus on the histories curriculum and teach them along the way, and make a whole entire journey where they can focus on this. And this could be a task that you could go through and do for half the year or for less time, really. It just comes down to how much time you want to dedicate to this. But it was very simple to make too, by the way. And I do want to share this because this is something that is popping up in a lot of schools at the moment, where I'm not a great artist in any way. I worked in the visual effects industry and motion graphics, but really, you know, I'm good at animation and I'm good at code and stuff like that. So I embraced new technology, and what I did was I went online, went to Stable Diffusion, which, if you don't know, is text to image, so text prompt to image AI, and I typed in this background. I basically typed in a game, gave it the reference in regards to what I wanted to see in the background, so landscape and what I wanted it to look like. And then what I did is I went through and generated this. And the reason why I'm showing this, because Stable Diffusion is free. And if you honestly have reservations about using it because you think it's stealing away from artists, I can totally understand that. But I can also tell you, talking to some of my ex-colleagues at Media Design School, they embrace it as well, because they've said to their students, take this, you can go through and generate something with it, but then add your own twist to it, which I totally agree. All it does is actually helps to speed up the whole process, and it will end up making a lot more artists, giving them more free time to develop new ideas as well. But with this, from there, I went online and I found another tool. So I did this in a way where I thought if a teacher didn't have Photoshop, they could extract the foreground and then swap out the water with a little bit of dirty water. And then there's my foreground. And then what I did is just pretty much put them back together inside Scratch as layers. Then started generating different things. The walker itself I actually found online, so I thought I had credit down there, but I didn't. But I just found online, and I'm going to go through and use that as an example to actually generate my own one and finish off this game. But the great thing is, once from there, I could then take them into Scratch, and then I could start animating in Scratch the different costumes. So as the paddles go through, and give it that whole real sort of look. And honestly, within an hour, this what you saw, that little mock-up, was done, and it only took an hour. And that's not because I know what I'm doing. Like, believe me, well, obviously you need to know what you're doing, but it's purely for the fact that you can generate a lot of stuff and get a lot of stuff done really fast if you use different tools, especially tools that are AI based at the moment. So once did that, just started building the game and getting the game to go through and work. And that is a project that I'm still working on, which will be probably working next week, and try and get it finished. So that way we can, hopefully send it out to teachers and see if they want to use it, not necessarily use it for their lessons there, but use it to learn how to build, because you can obviously remix and Scratch, learn how to build in their own one. Okay, so moving on, we have the microbit. So this is the one that we talked about that is really cheap to go through and use, and it has surpassed the Makey Makey because you can go through and do a lot of things in with the microbit that you can do with the Makey Makey. You can make musical instruments, you can do all sorts. This one here, let me just show you. So these are all the different things that it actually has on it. It has accelerometer, magnetometer, temperature sensor, light sensor, touch sensor. It has a whole bunch. It actually, the microbit, the latest one that's about to come out, I think at the end of this year, is going to have way more sensors on it than this one does. But the idea is BBC created this, or came up with the concept of this, then took it to Microsoft, then took it to Samsung, took it to a whole range of people who helped to go through and make this. This is why it's so cheap. But also they wanted to do this because they could see the potential of this being used for kids to prototype, to make things. Okay, so these are some of the things that we've used it for. Virus spreader. So obviously when the virus was, lovely COVID was going around, people wanted to educate after our first lockdown and things kind of became a little bit more normal. People wanted to educate students what a virus was, how fast it can contaminate, or go from one person to the next. And we created a very simple program that as you got closer to another microbit, it would either infect you or you'd be fine, depending on the way it cycled through its radio channels, because it has these radio channels. And if you had a radio channel that was 5 and it cycled through to 5 and it was in a proximity next to you, then you'd get the virus. So that was a great way of showing kids how to go through and understand that, if you're around this person for too long and they actually have the virus, then they can pass it on to you. The thermometer side of things we've used because it actually has a temperature sensor on it. And we put a microbit inside a cardboard box, and on the very front of the cardboard box, so we've actually aligned the cardboard box with tin foil so no heat can go out. And then at the very front, we've got just a little flat panel that we can replace it with, say, bubble wrap or polystyrene or something. And we do this so we can blow a little bit of hot air down a tube inside the box, and then kids can actually see what different types of materials would work really well for insulation. Pong extended, I'll come to that in the next slide. And it's also been used for game controllers and burglar alarms. So Pong is one of the ones that there's a tutorial that you can go through and do online. But we, as I said, we like to take things a little bit further and see what else we can do. And Pong Extended came about from showing the kids how to make Pong, to the point where I got really bored of just showing them how to make Pong. If you don't know what Pong is, it's one of the very first games where you had a little paddle at the bottom, a ball comes down, you've got to knock the ball back up. And it was developed actually in, I actually think it was close to the 70s. But the idea with this one here, Pong Extended, is when your ball goes out, it will go into someone else's microbit. And then it sends it from someone else's microbit to someone else and so on. And it works by a radio channel. Same sort of thing as the virus, but it just works this way where the ball comes in from different locations. And it's really fun. It's exciting because you hear kids in the classroom go, "Oh, I've got it now. Oh, I've got it. I've got it." And it's one of those things that you see the enjoyment in their faces, and then you also see the ones that haven't had the ball actually come onto their screen yet, and they're waiting in anticipation. So that's the microbit. Oh yes. So this here, let me just take these off. This here is how we've actually used the microbit with, once again, Project Y. Every year we have Project Y come through. And this is us using it as a prototype. And this was actually after the lockdown. I think this was the second time we had a lockdown. Students came in and we talked about all the things that would have happened during lockdown. And the one thing that we talked about was the fact that all of the kids could actually communicate with each other at home because they all had computers or they all had some sort of device to communicate with each other. But what about the elderly? And we talked about, what about if you had a grandmother at home who can't necessarily work technology, can't maybe use her phone? Because there's a lot of people who don't have landlines anymore and have to revert to a smartphone and things like that. And I know for a fact that if my grandfather was alive, he would not know how to use a smartphone. So we created this little exercise where they went through and did design thinking, and we talked about building a device, just using the microbit as a simple prototype where they could go and build something that could communicate to their loved ones, or their loved ones could communicate with them. And they came up with some fantastic ideas, like really awesome ideas. And the ideas were, you know, seemed simple, but they had their own different types of complexity to them. And the great thing is, a lot of them came up with some fun ideas, like, you know, my grandmother, why does my grandmother need to call me? Why don't I just have it so there's one button, she presses that one button, and then it sends a message to me to call her. So she knows as soon as she presses that button, yeah, I'm going to call her. Or maybe there's two buttons where she presses it, it goes out to maybe 3 or 4 people. And it was one of those ones where I think everyone working on it, including the teachers, were like amazed at what the students had come up with and what they were actually doing. We had students who were actually putting in there, because you can send messages obviously, and say, oh, my grandfather loves KFC, so he's going to have a button for KFC. So when I press it, they're going to, you know, it will mean that I have to go get them KFC. And once again, in reality, this probably wouldn't work. Obviously, it's a microbit, but it's a starting point and it gets them thinking. Okay, so next, the Arduino. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is in a field of its own. It is still a microcontroller, but it's a microcontroller that I'm just going to say it's like on steroids. It's really advanced in regards to what you can do with it. As I said, you can add extra accessories to it. And this is the one that I always turn back to when I'm trying out new things to see if they're going to work when it comes to like a prototype of something. Just to show you, this is caching, so ASB. And the guys who actually created, the company who actually created this, they actually used an Arduino to go through and work out what it would look like. The great thing about an Arduino is once again, it's very cheap. And the actual board itself is open source. The 3 lovely gentlemen who created it, because it's from Italy, they wanted the schematics to be open source. That means anyone can go through and replicate this board. You just can't use the Arduino name. So you'll find that there are some really cool looking Arduinos that look exactly the same, but they're called Funduinos. And they're like $3 or $4 from AliExpress. They work exactly the same. Honestly, they do. And if you were to use Arduinos in a class, I would definitely recommend going through and buying some on there instead of getting 100% Arduinos at the moment until you're ready to do your final prototyping. But this was used using a Funduino, and it was to go through and test out the cache-in money box for ASB. And these are all the different types of iterations that they went through and did. And as I said, you can turn it into a gate opener if you have extra things that go along with it. You can turn it into a automatic coffee machine. You can turn it into really anything. And if you ever want to see some great looking Arduino projects, just go on sites like Instructables, or just even go online and type it in, and you'll see some amazing things. Okay, moving on, robotics. So robotics, this is one that is interesting because, as I said before earlier, we have a lot of people that come in and they say, you know, this teacher was leading this and now they're gone and we don't know how to use that. And we get that a lot. There is all types of robots that are out there, and the market right now is flooded with different robots. And we get asked all the time, what is the best robot? And my answer is all of them. Serious, it really is, because if you can think of different ways to go through and use it, or if it works for you, then it's great. If it works for your students, then it's great. And then all you need to do is actually go through and figure out different ways of using it. Had a gentleman talk to me about the MBOTs, and he's done quite a few different things with the MBOTs, but he feels like he's kind of exhausted with them and there's not very much he can go through and do. And we've started talking about how you can actually incorporate other things with the MBOT. So the MBOT is this, there's a blue one just here. And one of the things that we've done with the MBOTs, which I'll just go through and show you, is we have made different types of scenario games. So let me just, next one. Okay, so for this game, wait, I won't call it a game, I'm going to call it a scenario. For this scenario, we need tinfoil, wire, paper cups, we need a makey, and we need an MBOT. As many MBOTs as you can you have, and obviously a laptop with Scratch or MBlock on it. And you can actually go through and use Scratch with the MBlots. You just have to load a few things, but I would honestly say use the MBlock with the MBOTs. And then if I show you this, I'll explain what this is. So we talked to the students about what do they think would happen if man does end up going to Mars, and to go through and put a colony on there and so on. Will man go first? And all of them have said probably not. It would probably be something that would go and start to build the infrastructure. It's like, yep, totally agree. We reckon that there would be robots that would go off first, that would build things, maybe put oxygen supplies in certain areas, or maybe even look at how they could terraform, you know, certain areas of the planet. And we came up with this little quick scenario to see what they could go through and make with the makey. And we talked about, okay, well, let's say that they had robots going through and helping them do things, but let's just say maybe on Mars there was a really bad dust storm, and maybe it knocked out some circuits to do with the oxygen farm, or to do with you know, your main life support. So we put all these cables down on the ground, and we put breaks within the cables. Then what we did is we put tinfoil on the cups and put them upside down. And then the goal was to actually program the robot to actually grab a cup and drive it over the two connecting points to allow the makey to be connected again, which was then hooked up to a monitor, and that then allowed the oxygen to basically go back up, and the oxygen level started going back up, so everyone's life support was fine. And it's a really fun sort of lesson, because they have to go through and build, you know, a lot of this themselves. They have to go through and code it, and they have to figure things out, or you could build it for them. You know, that's obviously completely up to you. But really, it's all about finding different ways of using, you know, the robotics. It's like the microcontrollers, using the microcontrollers in a completely different way, or adding value to the lessons. When started making this, the first thing that came to mind was used to play this game called Rob the Nest, which is you program a robot to go into a circle and basically grab as many cups as it can and then bring them out of the circle. And you can do it with the inbox. You can pretty much do it with it. You can even also do it with spheros if you build maybe something for the spheros to actually push the cup along. And I was thinking, okay, well, this is kind of fun. It reminds me of Rob the Nest. Well, how could I take Rob the Nest and add numeracy or literacy to it? Well, with literacy, what you could do is on every single cup there could be a letter, and as they drag those cups out, whoever can make the longest word, based on whatever letters they drag out, they get extra points. So you can keep adding and adding and adding to all these lessons, a lot of the different things that you would do in school. Same with mathematics. You could go through and get it so as the cups come out, they have to get to a certain number. I see it as being like a robotic countdown. So if you haven't seen Countdown, or 8 out of 10 cats does Countdown or things like that, that's the way I see it. It's kind of like that. And once again, it's just trying to find those links. How can I link this to this? And make it a little bit more fun or enjoyable, or really kind of knock 2 lessons out the way. And trust me, the kids get it, they really do. And I know you all probably know this because I'm sure you do a lot of this with your kids as well. Okay, so coming to the end, I'm sure I've probably sped through that, and so I'm sorry if I did. I just want to talk to you quickly about what MOTAT, what we have to offer, the shameless plug. So basically, we have obviously our on-site at MOTAT lessons. We love having schools come through here, and we love having people come to us asking for also various custom lessons as well, or how can you help us with this. So obviously you can come to MOTAT, you can go online and see all the different lessons that we run. There is the STEAM cells. The STEAM cells allows us to actually travel to your school, so we can cover across the North Island. We've gone all the way pretty much to the top of the North Island, I think just halfway down to the North Island. So if anyone really wants us down in Wellington, give us a call, because I wouldn't mind going down to Wellington soon. And that allows us to come to your school, and we bring all our gear, and we pretty much run our lessons, and that allows us to see pretty much all the students within the school. Then the other way is our learnable kits. We actually, because we found that a lot of schools were going through and buying a lot of gear, and it was getting put to the side because, as was said before, someone was running it and now they're gone. A lot of them are very cautious about buying things. They're also very cautious in regards to the fact that it can be quite expensive and then become outdated really fast. So we have a lot of learnable kits. We have various things digital. So we have a lot of microbits, robots. We also have science kits, lights and mirrors. We have a lot of different things. We have a lovely gardening kit for ECE as well. So you can actually hire these out, and we can actually take them up and down the North Island. And we're also looking into doing that for the South Island as well, where they can actually go to the South Island, and the courier cost is paid for in that. And then finally, just like what we're doing now, we have online workshops. We do run on free online workshops for students. So they're ones that we have created, and then the school can actually register, and we will run them on a certain day. And then we get maybe 4 or 5, 6 schools joining in online, and they're very interactive. We had a paper planes one, which was really awesome, which was run by one of my colleagues. And it was fun to see kids making paper planes at the other end and then firing them off and that. So we're talking about flight and so on. So yeah, and then the last thing is Solve for Tomorrow. So if you haven't heard about this competition, I would recommend definitely after this going and having a look. This is for year levels 5 to 10, and it's one of those things that I truly believe that is going to really help inspire those amazing inventors and innovators. It allows the students to actually try and find a problem within their community and then solve that. Whether that community is their school community or their overall community, but it allows them to go and actually have a voice. And it allows them to try and work out all the different things that can, make a success or make a failure. And it helps them to actually, get their ideas out there. And they can do this by themselves as individuals, or they can actually work together. I think in one of the competitions, we actually had 2 students who were at 2 different schools who actually worked together in that. And there are some large prizes. And obviously, if you look down in the corner there, you'll see that it's partnership with MOTAT and TENS as well. And I know the lovely Sarah is one of the judges. So and also I think my manager Julie is also one of the judges. And the great thing is the entries are still open. It doesn't close until September. And if you get your entries in fast enough, you will actually get feedback from the judges as well, which will give you some really good understanding of what you might need to tweak and fix to actually go through and resubmit and hopefully, get it across the line. All right. Okay. So that is me. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing.
Kia ora, Damon. Thank you very, very much for taking us for a whistle-stop tour of all those amazing tools and resources that, we probably do have hidden away in cupboards or shelves or and people are going, what are these and how do we use them? It is actually about getting people on board and using those things again. So thank you very much. There's a load of ideas there that people can take and use in the classroom. And obviously, if they look online for some of those different areas, especially some of the different software, I know there's lots of tutorials to help and support people as well. What I really, really liked about your presentation was not only obviously is it linking to digital technologies, but also the technology curriculum as a whole, because you can see the whole design process there. You can, what I like about your microcontrollers is you can use them with materials too. So you can use them with hard materials and resistant materials and soft materials, and you can combine them and you can be very hands-on and very practical. So it's not sedentary coding and programming. The kids are active and moving and going through those design processes. But you can also integrate and link these things not only with STEM subjects, but a whole heap of different curriculum subject areas as well in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's the key is if you are just using it the same way over and over again, try revisiting and looking at it in a completely different way. And see how you can link it.
Absolutely. And just while we're just having a chat, if anybody does have any questions for Damon, if you pop them into the Q&A, we can obviously answer or get Damon to answer any of the questions that come up if anybody does have one. I do have a quick question. People may be in a school and actually they don't have any of these resources. Which resource essentially out of the microcontrollers would you suggest people potentially start with as a starting space in their classroom?
For the cost, I would honestly say microbit, and purely for the fact that it has a lot more support where there are more and more updates being done within make code, new blocks being created. So if you look at the way I see it is, if you look at any sort of technology and you're going to go out and buy it, look at the support for it first for schools, especially where you're buying it from, because if something happens, you need to make sure you have that support there. But also look at the impact when it comes to socially. So if it has a huge following, you can guarantee it's going to be around, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if it doesn't necessarily have that huge following yet, just maybe hold off and just wait. But yeah, definitely the microbits.
Yeah, awesome. I've used microbits quite a bit in the classroom, and what people might not realize is, yes, you can use it as a standalone, but you can also add other components to it, and you can also turn it into a robot if you get the extension kits, or you actually get the kids to design and create their own code.
And I suppose that's the other thing. I mean, for us, obviously, go out and get those extension kits if you can, but looking at it from our point of view, what we try to do is make it where, like, if you just had a microbit and only a microbit, what are the fun things that you could go through and do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do lots of things with lots of materials that you would normally throw away. Let's put it that way. I used to have a big area with shelves with all the stuff that would normally go in the recycling and put that there. And the kids would use that to help to model and prototype and develop different items so that they can actually make things physically as well to work with the controllers too. which is fantastic. The other question I was thinking is, I mean, I was really interested in your the Walker game that you were creating, and I'm sure there'll be other people out there as well, and potentially when they jump on board and they see this on YouTube as well, would there be the chance to, once you've maybe completed that game in Scratch, to potentially share the link so people can see how it's created and remix it or reuse it in their own situations potentially?
Yeah, what I'd like to do with that is get it to a point where they kind of have to take it that next step. So basically get a working model, but then they can just keep going through and extending it to fit their needs. And that's pretty much the goal. But yeah, definitely keen on sharing, because it's, you know, that's how innovation starts. You know, I can guarantee someone will pick it up and take it to the next level and make it 10 times better than what I do. So yeah.
Oh, it's looking pretty impressive already, I must say. I was quite impressed, especially with those graphics. It's amazing what AI can do nowadays. Hey,
yeah.
Like those things. But what a great way of introducing that to your students, though, in a safe space, to get them to be creators of tools as well, and use it for good effect too, as opposed to maybe looking at the negativity behind it all, which is obviously a lot of discussion at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, with the whole ChatGPT as well, like what we have talked about, and we haven't tried this out with students yet, but we have actually started to play around with this, where we've built a persona. So the one thing about ChatGPT is, a lot of people think you just type in stuff and it gives you feedback. No, it's about you actually teaching it. And so if you wanted to, you could put in, you know, my name is I'm going to put all this information in you, and you're going to have the persona of this gentleman by the name of Darren, who's a surfer and is worried about the shore and everything else, and put all this information into it to the point where students could actually interview it. So if you're doing design thinking, they could actually go through, you know, part of design thinking is having empathy. Well, if you're not necessarily able to go out and interview someone to hear their stories, you could then go and create these different personas within ChatGPT, and they interview them and ask them, you know, what are you afraid of? And it will come back with all this information, and it will make them feel like they're actually talking to a human being. So yeah.
Awesome. What a great idea. Well, a big thank you. I know we're just over 5 o'clock for people, so big thank you once again for joining us today and sharing your mahi and sharing the ideas that you have, and hopefully we've inspired a few more teachers to go rummaging in their schools and try and find some of these bits and pieces. For those of you who are still online, and for those people who watch afterwards, please if you could fill out the feedback form for us at TENS. This helps to support us to create more events, more professional learning opportunities for you, because obviously you can give us your feedback about what you would like and how you enjoyed today's session as well. Like we've mentioned before, after today's session, this webinar will be posted straight up onto the TENS YouTube channel, so you can go back and you can listen to Damon as many times as you'd like to in the future. Just a plug for our next Wednesday webinar. We have got on Wednesday the 26th of July, we have got Ashley Fox and the women engineering students from the University of Auckland, and they are discussing obviously this space about women in engineering from their experiences from going from school through to industry. So the registration link is available now. You can find either through our TENS webpage, or obviously we have got the QR code here, so you can stop the video when it's on YouTube and scan, and you can register as well. So again, once again, big thank you, and we'll just finish off today with our karakia. Kia amato katoa, kua mutu mato amatu mahi, me kaupapa hoki. Arahina mato, ka amatu mahi ano, kia whakatapua mato ki ngā kaupapa, me ngā mea e whakapono. Manakitia mai mato. Kia ora everybody, ka kite, and have a wonderful evening.